Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker session. I see the room filling up here. It's great to see some familiar names. Go ahead and in the chat box, tell us who you are and where you're from, and put your Penn State class year in there so we can see who is joining us on today's Zoom. Looking forward to our virtual speaker session that will get started in just a couple of minutes. Again, welcoming people into the virtual speaker session here. I see the Zoom starting to fill up. If you could go ahead and tell us where you're from and your Penn State class year and your name, go ahead and put that in the chat so we can see who's visiting with us today. I see Carlos Rodriguez from the class of 2015 zooming in from New York City. Welcome, Carlos. We are also live on Facebook, and so if you're watching us on our Facebook live stream, go ahead and put a comment in the chat and let us know that you are tuning in. I see Ritika Bafna, originally from India, but currently in Happy Valley, a member of the class of 2020. Thanks for zooming in, Ritika, and participating in the virtual speaker series. Bill Davis, tuning in from Ambler, Pennsylvania, class of 1972. Welcome, Bill. Again, we're very excited to bring our presentation to you in just a couple of minutes. Bernice Marks from the class of 1963 in Mazatlan, Mexico. Hello, Bernice. And Steve Mentzer, tuning in from Tennessee. A wide array of locations tuning in for today's virtual speaker session with Dr. Glantz. Looking forward to hearing his presentation in just a couple of minutes, and thank you all for participating in today's virtual speaker session presented by the Penn State Alumni Association. See Josh from Lancaster County in the class of 2016, Neil, class of 2021, tuning in from Bucks County. A familiar name, Terry Eschnauer from Atlanta, Georgia, in the class of 66. Welcome, Terry. I see James L. Zhang, currently in State College, class of 2021. Looks like some current students are zooming in, probably part of the Dr. Ed Glantz fan club. And we will be getting started in just a minute or two, but thank you all for tuning in, and go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're from and your Penn State class year in the chat. We'll be getting started in just a minute. It is so good to see the Zoom filling up. I want to wish everybody a good afternoon and welcome you, and thank you for joining it. Thank you for joining us and tuning in. We have had a week off from the virtual speaker session, a little summer break, but we are back today with a great presentation. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I want to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session. As a reminder, today's discussion is being recorded, And we welcome Dr. Edward Glantz, teaching professor and interim director of the master's degree program in Penn State's College of IST. Today's discussion is the latest installment of a recurring series of virtual programming that is brought to you by the Alumni Association. Additionally, you can find more information about our virtual events, about career networking opportunities, about other webinars that we are hosting by visiting our website. You can find that at alumni.psu/events, alumni.psu.edu/events. You know, cybersecurity is a top concern among business and individuals. Risk has increased with the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing, while remote workers and devices of the current pandemic have grown the threat landscape even further. The good news for defenders, at least, is positive employment. Dr. Glantz will review the current cyber trends and headline-making breaches, as well as cyber education opportunities and security recommendations that we can all follow. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ed Glantz. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm very glad to be here with you today and our other alumni. I myself am a Penn State alumnus, and I married my alumna. We met in the hub about 40 years ago, and together we have raised 3 alumni. If we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about my background. I got started in computers about 40 years ago as an undergraduate, and this was way before personal computers were very common. So it's been part of me my entire career, and my deep dive into the cybersecurity began about 10 years ago whenever I joined the College of IST. So let's go to the next slide and talk about this agenda. So I'm going to cover a couple things. I'm going to briefly present a few ideas on some trends in cybersecurity from my perspective. I'm going to also talk about some game-changing cyber news events that have occurred. And then I think this should be interesting to all of you. What's Penn State doing in cyber education? And then finally, share some tips and recommendations for everybody. So let's go to the next slide. Where I'm going to talk about what's called the Cia Triad. I went back and forth about whether to include this slide. I'm going to be brief on it. It's an important slide because fundamentally it helps to illustrate what the challenge is in cybersecurity. Why is it a constant news event? Why isn't something that we can just fix quickly and walk away from? So I have a picture at a gas station, pay at the pump here. That is an information system, and the formula I use for an information system is at the bottom of the slide here. It's a bunch of information technology. That's the part in parentheses, hardware, software, database, networks. And to that information technology, we add people and processes. That's what the cyber defenders have to protect, anything that is an information system. What does protect mean? That's where the Cia Triad comes in. We have to protect the confidentiality of the information that's being transmitted. That means that it's encrypted and private only to the intended recipients. We have to protect the integrity of the data that's being stored and also transmitted. That means that that data is not manipulated or corrupted, and we need to have validation taking place to assure that. And the third one, and this is perhaps the most difficult one, is to protect and guarantee availability of that information system functioning when we need it to function. And in this case, we could defeat availability with a piece of chewing gum that we stick into the card swipe. But let's go to the next slide and look at a better example of a compromise for go back one slide to the skimmers. So this is a more realistic example of a compromise that would take place with that kind of an information system, a public-facing card swiping information system. These are skimmers that are attached to devices when you insert your credit card or your debit card into an ATM machine on the lower right here, or a gas pump on the upper right here, that an attacker has put a little device that will copy your credit card or debit card information, and if they need to, they'll add a camera nearby to record the PIN that you're going to enter as well. There's a link on this slide that's to the FTC with tips about how to protect yourself against skimmers that can be attached. And by the way, these skimmers can be beautiful. They're very hard to detect visually. That's why in the lower right one, they recommend that you wiggle that card swipe on the ATMs to see if it will detach, because they're typically only held in place with double-sided tape. The original and the legitimate card swipe channel is actually attached, much more sophisticated. So in this case, this would be a compromise of confidentiality. The chewing gum would have been a compromise of availability. All right, so let's jump down to the next slide. So from this slide, we can see the complexity of protecting the system, but let's look at the next slide and just look at a brief history, because I think this kind of looking at the history of how we got to where we are today kind of will explain, not justify, but certainly explain perhaps why these things have been occurring the way they have. Yes, depending on when you're born, the upper left picture there is a telephone modem. That used to be how we connected our computers to a network. It was not the internet at that time. Those were private networks that we were connecting our computers to around 1990, Prodigy, AOL, CompuServe. Even as primitive as the systems were at that time, they were actually much more secure than our systems are today. For one thing, there weren't a lot of attackers out there. For another thing, that computer was only connected to the phone network for the brief time that the user was sitting at the computer, monitoring the computer, and would have known if there was a malicious activity taking place. When we jump ahead just a couple years to picture number 2, we see the Soho started to take off in 1995, that small office, home office. And the reason Soho was becoming popular was because now we had broadband connections into the homes. We had high-speed internet access being provided by cable and telephone providers. And we were letting our computers connected to those networks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no more security than we had 5 years earlier when we were using the modem. But now we didn't have the advantage of disconnecting from the network. So that's also whenever it became a popular game at that point for people to see whose computers that they could connect to and what information that they could find. It hadn't migrated yet to criminal and other unsanctioned activity. Jumping ahead a couple years to the lower left photo, the Internet of Things, IoT. That's a telephone, or that's the doorbell in this case has a camera system built into it. That's a smart doorbell. It'll alert you and send you video if someone's coming up to your door. The Internet of Things is trying to make all the things around us smart, putting chips in them, our refrigerators, our thermostats, our cameras. The problem with the IoT development, and this is continued until now, until it's gotten enough attention that they're starting to try to address it. The engineers that were developing these devices did not come from the computing arena, that had spent 15 plus hard years learning how to secure networks. So they were putting passwords on these devices that were hard coded. You couldn't change the password, or there was no password on the IoT device. There's a story of a casino that's network was compromised through their smart aquarium. They brought an aquarium in that had monitoring equipment on it, and they connected it to the network, and it had no security on it. And so the attackers were able to come in through the aquarium and connect into their network and compromise the casino's networks that way. Fortunately, now we're starting to see IoT devices are starting to get the treatment and protection that they need to have, but they should have learned already, but it was just the way the engineering was taking place. The lower right, 2020 today, some big topics in the news today are the cloud development. We're putting a lot of our data, storing it offsite in cloud providers. That can be a good thing, because sometimes those cloud providers can put more specialized security to protect our data than we could on our own systems. There is another issue here, though, is that cloud provider trusted? Are they doing the best that they can? So it's not any cloud provider, but the good ones, it's certainly a good choice to try to use their expertise to protect your data. Artificial intelligence is another thing that's a lot in the news right now for cybersecurity, for both reasons, for good and for bad. The good news with AI and cybersecurity, we have, if you think of a computer system, a big company could have 70,000 computers. Each one of those is generating log files. It's too much for a human being to process this, but an AI system can go through and make sense out of the log files that are being generated and other information. That's the good news. The bad news is attackers can turn around and use AI systems to attack our networks, learn why it didn't work, reattack until, having learned what didn't work, the correct way to stay below the radar and not set off our alarm systems. So what we've seen on the left side, there's been a lot of stuff taking place, technology, shifting the technology and information path. A lot of stuff's been taking place on the left side. What about the social side of the network? Let's look at the next slide and see a cartoon that summarizes this. I find this cartoon humorous. It's a ring. On one side of the ring, we have all of our very, very effective technology equipment that we have, the hardware and software, super good at protecting our networks. But remember, an information system includes people and processes. The people side of the equation have not advanced very much in the last 20 years since we've seen the technology advancing very rapidly. So that's the humorous side of the cartoon, but I'm also equally offended by this cartoon as a cognitive scientist because I disagree with the notion of human error. If a human does what humans do, that's not an error, that's humans doing what they do. We as technologists have an obligation to not let humans do what we don't want them to do. And I'll give you a good example of that. It used to be when you deleted a file, it was gone. Whether it was on purpose or by accident. Now we have a recycle bin, so you've got another chance to go and retrieve that file if you want to get it back. So, but anyhow, I think there's a message here that we need to do more than we have been doing, perhaps, to train the end users on our systems and also individually as homeowners, as users at our homes. All right, let's go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit more about the social side of this equation. So this is some research that came out of a man named Cialdini, who studied how do people manipulate other people to do what they want. And he was doing it, and his work has been used very effectively and successfully from sales and marketing. Pretty much any infomercial you watch is going to use, you have 24 hours for this deal until it expires and everyone else loves this product. So you can combine these things together to be effective to get people to like you and do what you want. And every time I go into a hotel, you're seeing this Cialdini's persuasion being applied. They know that if they put these notes in the hotel, and they specifically say other people that stayed in this hotel, so they're leveraging that consensus opportunity there. So they're finding that that makes this more effective. I don't know if attackers studied Cialdini or they just do this intuitively and natively, but they're using all of these techniques to get the end user to do what they want you to do. Why should I spend time trying to guess your password when it's a lot easier for me to just walk up and ask you what your password is? And there's clever ways that they do that to get you to comply. So let's jump ahead to the next slide and look at an example where social engineering, these articles of persuasion, were actually put in place for a major breach. So there's a good quote here at the top of this slide from a book that Kevin Mitnick wrote. Kevin Mitnick was one of the first tennis shoe hackers that did serious jail time, and he's now a very highly compensated security consultant. And this person says there's nothing magical about social engineering. We just saw that. It's how we use persuasion to get along with people day to day. But the problem is whenever we turn it and use it for the dark side, that it's highly unethical and manipulative manner that attackers are using to manipulate that. So this was an email that was actually sent to a company called RSA to 6 employees at RSA. And it had an attachment to it, an Excel file that said 2011 recruitment plans. The technology worked great. The technology was alerted, said this is a suspicious email, put it into the junk folder. It was not uncommon for people to go and check their junk folder for false positives because good email was getting filtered out along with malicious or suspicious email. And one of those 6 employees saw that alluring attachment and was curious what the company's recruitment plans were for next year, clicked on that Excel file that ran software code in the background that actually allowed a backdoor into the network for the attackers. And then from that point, the attackers were able to escalate privileges and move laterally through RSA to get to the token information, and that's what that RSA Secure ID is on the right side of the screen here. That is a second form authentication generator. So companies that had a high priority for security would say you have a username and a password, something you know, but they wanted to have additional security by saying something you have. Each employee was given one of those secure IDs that generated a unique number for each employee. So you put your password in and that number, and then the system would say, okay, that really is the person who's authorized to access this system. This is a very sophisticated attack. It's like a chess game. You're not really sure what the end game is of the attacker's intent. In this case, in time, we were able to figure out they were actually trying to compromise defense industry contractors. They had passwords for some of those people, but they didn't know their secure ID numbers. And so their attack on RSA was to get the numbers associated with employees at other companies so that they could access their files. And this is also a big turning point in the early, around 2011, the last couple of years, I'd say it's really stepped up, where hacking used to be for fun, then it was for kids seeing what they could get away with, but now it's become really sophisticated, organized criminal elements, and also very precise corporate and government espionage is taking place. So the target now isn't so much a smash and grab. I'm going to break in your system. How many credit cards can I run away with? Now the whole key is to stay below detection. And the average time for an attacker in these advanced compromises to be in the person's network could be for over a year. So it's a very different kind of a criminal activity that's taking place. So let's go to the next slide and look at some other headlines that have taken place. I'm not going to talk about these, but when you get the notes, these are just some articles that you can look into if they're interesting to you. I'll just talk about the one in the top left for reference. This was the OPM attack in 2015. This was another advanced persistent threat attack. That means it was a very sophisticated attacker with a lot of resources, a lot of patience, and they were able to get inside of the OPM government agency to exfiltrate applications for people looking for jobs that required a top secret security clearance. So these were high valued targets for whichever organization was behind this attack. The headline said 5.6 million people's identities were at risk of being stolen. These documents, these SF-86 documents, are very detailed about everything about somebody's personal life as well as their friends and family. So in total, it was well over 20 million people's identities that were at risk of being compromised. And that was 2015, and since then we've seen the compromises have been even bigger. So anyhow, lots of information on this slide for organizations. And if you have questions about any of those, we can maybe come back and talk about some of them later. So let's take a jump to the next slide and look at what's going on in the news today. Currently, and there's a couple things on this slide. I was looking for recent breaches that were newsworthy, and I thought this headline was great. The worst hacks and breaches of 2020 so far. We're far from over yet, and there's actually websites that will track breaches historically, and you can navigate through that. It's not whether we're going to stop breaches from happening, in my opinion. It's just whether we can contain them and make them not be so devastating. The coronavirus has provided an opportunity for some older breaches to be remanipulated and repackaged as part of the coronavirus. Whenever the government was dispersing funds, there was a whole bunch of phishing email that were sent out to people saying, hi, we're from the government. Your funds are available. Click this link below and give us your personal information and we'll release the funds to your account. So it's not uncommon for these attackers to take advantage of what's going on in the news and what people are kind of being manipulated into thinking it's a legitimate email. I wanted to give you another tip here, and that is my strong advice is never click a link in an email. I'm going to be giving you links in this PowerPoint. If you want, you can go to and Google for that article, and that's a little bit safer and better than actually trusting or clicking on anyone's link. Especially because in an email, we can obfuscate what it may look like your link is going to, if you click, it's going to go to one site, but you're actually going to go to another site without you realizing it. So that has helped me in several occasions following that policy. So that's just one piece of advice I'd want to share, one recommendation. Just if you're in the habit of clicking links in emails, that's something you might want to be very careful about who the sender was, and is it truly a link that's going to go where you think it's to. Or do you even have an account at Wells Fargo, and maybe that email is not legitimate, that you're getting, that your bank account has a problem. All right, let's just jump ahead a little bit and talk about IST. So very exciting. College of IST has been around for 20 years. They just had a big press release about celebrating 20 years of their building. And I'm very happy. So this article here is about a release we just did last month. We now offer undergraduate, Bachelor of Science, graduate, Master of Science degrees in cybersecurity, both on campus and online in World Campus. And that's what that press release was about. We now are able to offer cyber education to a broad range of prospective students. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see some example of some of the recruiters. And this is just a little teeny snapshot. I'm probably not fair to all of the companies that recruit, but I will share a story with you. We have for many years had recruiters come into our building. I know most recruiting takes place over in the Bryce Jordan Center, but we had so much interest in our students, we were actually letting the recruiters come into our building in September and in January to just meet with our students. And we filled up the IST building. It got to the point where you couldn't even walk through the hallways in the Westgate building, I'm sorry. So we've now moved our recruiting up to the Nittany Lion Inn, and that's where we take up both floors in the Nittany Lion Inn for all of the companies coming in to try to access our students. The more students they hire, the more students they want to hire. It's a great cycle that we have going on from an alumni perspective there, Paul. So that's the good news with the recruiting from IST students. The next slide is really my last slide that I wanted to share with you. It's just a link to some suggestions. And this is something that you can Google because, like I mentioned earlier, this is a changing landscape of what are good practices and what are important practices. The AARP has some good suggestions on their sites. I just pulled some of my favorites and put them on this slide. We can not do enough to improve our password security. We probably should never have used Word in that to begin with. It would have been more protective if we'd used passphrase, because you want it to be longer than just one simple word. We'd like to have upper and lower characters. And perhaps the most important thing about your password is don't use the same one on all your websites. The first thing when an attacker breaches a website and exfiltrates all of the accounts and passwords from that site, they're going to go then see what other accounts they can open up on other websites, and they'll try banks and other things. So it's pretty important that you use a variety of passwords, that your passwords are sophisticated or complicated. I have a personal mission to try to get students to take second form authentication more serious. Facebook, Google, Apple, all of these major websites that you go to, Yahoo, all of the major online places that you'll do business with or use their information will offer 2FA. They will let you require a cell phone number text gets sent to you that you can enter a number to verify that it's you. So something you know, something you have. And that's not perfect, but it's better than not doing it. And I think the key strategy with cybersecurity in general is not be the most vulnerable person out there, to just do anything you can to increase your security. So I went through this pretty quickly. These slides are going to be available, and I wanted to make sure that we had time for discussion. Paul, so have I done pretty good for time?
We are great for time, and thank you very much for the presentation. If you have a question for Dr. Glantz, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, or if you are on Facebook, you could go ahead and put them in the comments. But we have a few questions that have already come in that I'll go through. So what advice do you have what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time to think what has helped you in your career? A number of students are here today on the Zoom, and so they're probably looking to glean some of the wisdom that you have gained throughout your career. So if you could talk to your younger self, what advice would you give?
Thanks, Paul. We just did this with our graduating students because we recorded a message to each of them. And the one message I shared was to be a lifelong learner. We hear that a lot. It is so important. And hopefully that inspiration for learning new subjects was inspired as an undergraduate. But especially if you're going into a technology field, it's constantly moving and evolving and changing. So being a lifelong learner is probably the number one piece of advice I could give.
Yeah, it's probably struck you from time to time that the degrees that you have earned throughout your life uh, may have reinforced some of the skills that you use today, but certainly didn't prepare you for the work that you're doing today, right? The job that you have today didn't exist when you were pursuing those degrees. And so the advice to be a lifelong learner, I'm sure, is one that has kept you progressing throughout your career.
And a sidebar to that is that allows you to leverage into opportunities that are arising in front of you that you can take advantage of.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears and take a look at the job market. Certainly, the presentation that you have just gone through means that there's going to be a lot of job security for IST graduates coming out of the college there. And it's almost, at least for the foreseeable future, going to be an unquenchable thirst. There's going to be more need than there are jobs. But how do you foresee the growing need for cybersecurity affecting the job market in the coming decades?
Well, certainly in the near term, there's a critical skills gap in cybersecurity, and that's one of the reasons that we're now teaching. We have so many education programs in our college to try to help with that. That this shortage of qualified individuals with skills in cybersecurity is not going to be closed, in my opinion, for at least a couple decades, if we're lucky to ever close it. Some states have taken initiatives to get cyber education capabilities into the K through 12 arena as well, and supporting higher education by creating cyber ranges. Ohio, Virginia, Florida, Michigan are examples of states doing that. I'd like to see Pennsylvania do that as well. But yeah, this is a real explosive field, lots of opportunities, lots of real diverse kind of work in the field as well. Some of it's very people focused and some of it's very hardware computer focused. There's room for everyone in this arena.
So just a couple weeks ago, major headlines of an intrusion at Twitter where a number of high-profile Twitter accounts were taken over, and all with a similar message to send donations to of Bitcoin or send Bitcoin to this account. How can companies protect against intrusions like what happened at Twitter and some of the other things with like the COVID-19 vaccine development companies?
Well, in my understanding of the Twitter compromise, that it was individuals who had their accounts that were compromised. I wasn't actually sure how they compromised the accounts, if they actually did it through Twitter or they did it through the individuals. It's very easy to guess passwords. That's not hard at all. Twitter, by the way, is an organization that has enabled 2FA. I'm pretty certain of that.
Right.
So the shift in cyber defense there's two parts to your question. The shift in cyber defense has shifted from, we're going to put up so many barriers, nobody's ever going to break through. That security and layers thinking, that privileged user access is kind of not so effective. So the new trend now is what they're calling zero trust, which is, if you think about it from a house perspective, you may be able to break through my front door, but literally every door and cupboard in my house is going to have a lock on it. So you're not going to just have free access wherever you want. And that's one thing that organizations are starting to change in how they're thinking it. So now we're saying a breach may happen. Our responsibility is to detect it as quickly as possible and mediate it and get systems back to normal. I have some links in that one document I shared with you that you can share with them. One of my big concerns is for small size businesses. Half of the attacks are on small businesses that have very minimal cyber defenses in place. And the government and some other websites have put together some suggestions for small businesses. I also have a link in there that the government is using with defense subcontractors to help them harden their networks as well. So we need to do a lot more than we're doing, and we also need to be aware that breaches are possible. The second part of your equation was the social engineering. So they were asking for funding, I think, for political motivated investments. So
Right.
this is my other tip I wanted to share. We need to be a lot more skeptical and suspicious of everything. If someone's asking you to donate for a charity, go out and validate that that is actually who's going to get that money if you do that, if you're so inclined. That has helped me a couple times from email. That if I get an email that I almost click on and then I calm down and realize it's a phishing email, I actually I save those in a folder, because those go into my folder of fame for phishing email.
Yeah. A number of questions coming in on a topic that I was actually going to ask you a question about, but it's how secure, the specific question is, I wonder how secure the Apple Cloud is. Are there different levels of security with different cloud type platforms? Or talk a little bit about, is it safer to store something on a computer? Is it safer to store something on a network? Is it safer to store something on a cloud platform?
That's the safest. This gets back to the Cia Triad. This is a hard question. The safest way to store data is probably encrypted offline. That's probably the safest way. The people that have Bitcoins, they actually have devices that are kept offline and are fireproof. They're literally going through all aspects of the Cia Triad, including availability, protection from fire. I actually, I do believe that the major cloud providers are actually pretty good about their security, as good as we can be. And Apple is one of them. Google has pretty good, Penn State, for example, works with Google and with Microsoft for their cloud storage. So some of these bigger, more credible cloud providers actually can offer probably more security than you could at your home, including perhaps protection from what's called the encryption attack. I'm drawing a blank right now. James will help me out here. The ransomware attack, where you turn on your computer one day and everything's encrypted. So there are some cloud providers that can actually provide defense against that. But it used to be we would connect another drive up to our computer, and we would be backing up our computer in real time to that other drive. That gave us a little bit of protection, but we still had anything that would harm the computer, fire, theft would also harm the backup drive. So I'm kind of a supporter of people that are looking at cloud security from major providers. And nothing's perfect, but they can do a little bit more than a lot of homeowners can do with their hard drives, which are actually quite vulnerable. A hard drive on your personal computer, I tell all the students, it has a warranty of 2 years. Remember that.
Talk a little bit about where security fits in the R&D process. I would imagine that, if you're developing a computer or a network, right, the development of that has security probably right on the forefront. If you're developing a refrigerator that is connected to the internet, probably not on the top of the list, right? So talk about, when you talk about the Internet of Things, how is that incorporated in the R&D process?
Well, and I was a design engineer. That was my first job out of Penn State, and so I'm intimately familiar with how design engineering works and how product development works. And so the IoT fiascos were completely predictable, and so I think it's going to work a little bit better going forward because there were so many compromises that were demonstrated. Pacemakers, insulin injection pumps were being compromised. ATM machines were spewing out money. Um, so, so I, the government is doing a lot better with providing recommendations and standards for development practices. Um, I think at an education level, we can probably do a little bit better job building the idea of security into the electrical and mechanical engineering fields, making students become aware of it. So this is going to be something that's going to be a work in progress, but certainly we're a lot further along with IoT security today than we were back in 2014.
Now, I'm certainly a novice when it comes to this topic, right? But when I think about it as being a race between the security folks, right, the defenders as you've called them, and the hackers, right? Who's running faster right now? Who's winning? Who's winning the race?
Well, they're actually they're an interesting group because their only difference is intent. The tools that they use, how
Right.
they do their work, is actually very similar. Um, the the part of the issue here is some of the vulnerabilities are coming from the technology changes. So a new technology comes out that has a vulnerability in it that wasn't recognized. So it's not like we're dealing on a static football field where the ball is being pushed back and forth. It's like the football field keeps changing and new and yardage is being gained. Um, it's probably it's it's not we got a lot of work to do on the defending side. Let me just put it that way. I don't think anyone can stand up and say I have built the most invincible system anyone has ever seen. That dream is still a little bit into the future. There's systems that are much harder to compromise than other systems, but and I'm including people in that phrase too. So yeah, I'm diplomatically trying to say it's a draw or a tie, but it depends on what day it is, Paul. Let's say it that way. But we have some really, really talented people coming in, some really creative new thinking. I mentioned about the zero trust model. So there's lots of really good things. But you know what, Paul, until we start bringing it back into the K through 12 education, and there is no digital literacy requirement at any university, to my knowledge. We require written and verbal communication credits. We require quantitative skills. There's no digital literacy. And so I think that'll probably be when we start to do a little bit better, is whenever we're leveling the playing field a little bit.
You talked about K through 12 education, and certainly not how you intended, but many students, whether it's here locally in State College or in the state of California, are going to be participating in K through 12 remotely. What advice do you have for teachers and parents about keeping children safe as they work remotely, or keeping your home network safe, or keeping your home devices safe as children continue to work on them through school?
And this is another thought related to the pandemic, because it used to be at least a company had all the employees in a building and they could try to create network security there, but now their network is distributed across the entire surface of the earth, so it's a much more difficult platform to secure. My recommendation for keeping children safe online is kind of similar to keeping them safe in the world, and that is through communication and creating safe parameters. There is an advantage to upgrading your hardware at home. I know we put cable modems in, or a provider gives us a cable modem that we're using for years and years, but those, as they become obsolete, and I would say probably 3 years and older, they start to become obsolete. They're now vulnerable to a compromise. But I'll just share a story. When my kids were little, it was a little bit easier. We had a computer in the house. I put it right next to the TV. When they used the computer, I could look over their shoulder. One of the safety parameters I put in place was no chat rooms. I look up and they're in a chat room, and I said, I told you no chat rooms. And they said, but it's a religious chat room. And I go, that's absolutely probably the worst place a child should be in. So anyhow, it's a matter of communication. I will tell you this, I know people that do this, they have apps that they can, and it's harder now with mobile devices. It's much more difficult because you can't see what people are doing in their rooms. But I also know that, for example, our cable provider allows us to shut the Wi-Fi off at night if we want to. We can put hours of operation on it. So there's things that you can do, but if you're not going to have a good relationship, then putting apps on phones which are available to track children are not going to be as effective if you don't have that communication going.
So nothing replaces actually talking to your children.
Yes, exactly. It's no different than the real world. It's just being aware and supervising, because there will be lapses of judgment, and you have to be sensitive to that.
Let's shift gears away from some of the really terrifying stuff that we have been talking about to some of the things that I think we all take pride in, and that is our College of IST, and how you prepare students to go out and be defenders and do the noble work, and work with the right intent in this race that we're talking about. What differentiates Penn State's programs from other similar programs around the country?
We were one of the first to get into cyber education, and that was because we had the College of IST. We had right after 9/11, we started our security and risk analysis degree, which had an option in it on cyber. So we were one of the very original groups to get into that. Things that we do that I think are really effective, that's going to help them on the job. We have a lot of hands-on training skills. There's really no way around that. We do lots of group work, working in teams. We really emphasize communication. It doesn't matter what class you're in, you're going to be presenting in writing, you're going to be presenting verbally. We encourage research skills. We're actually, I think, trying to develop the left and right sides of the brain. And I think that really helps them in the job place.
You mentioned in your presentation the power of the Penn State network and how you have Penn Staters coming back to recruit IST students. IST is still a relatively new college at Penn State, less than 15, 20 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And so what I love about that story that you tell, that it's not always necessarily IST grads coming back to recruit other IST grads. It's SMEAL, it's engineering, but it's Penn Staters looking for Penn State talent.
Yeah, the Penn State network is very visible. It doesn't matter where you go. I was out at RSA in San Francisco with my Penn State shirt, getting "We Are's" yelled across this giant arena. So yeah, it's absolutely, it's a real treat to be part of the Penn State family. I can tell you that.
Well, we want to thank you for sharing the work that you're doing on campus, for truly terrifying us. And I'm going to go change all my passwords now and look up what 2FA means, and if Twitter has it, and make sure that I'm all secure.
I'm going to just ask you one question. Do you know what the most popular password is?
I don't know. I know the joke is like your cat's name.
No, it's password. I mean, this is how bad we are. I can tell you the top 10 passwords. They've never changed, and it's really bad. So yes, go do that.
And look at General Toohill just put that in the chat. He put password in the chat. Certainly, I'm not sure if you've ever met Greg Toohill, but he was
yes, I have.
He was a defender for a long time with NKIC down in the DC area, and certainly not only defended our country in the service, but it's still defending us against these cyber attacks, and a great American. So it's great to see him on the virtual speaker series here. So thank you so much for sharing your presentation and for letting us hear about the great work that you're doing. We truly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another session of our virtual speaker series. As a reminder, we'll be hosting more of these sessions in the coming weeks and months, and this program is in addition to the wide array of networking events and career programs that are available throughout the year. You can find that listing on our website at alumni.psu.edu/events. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.
Thank you.